Welcome back. This is the 9th video in my tutorial series on my procedural text generation tool, ProcGenie. If you haven't followed along so far, I'd recommend starting at the beginning, but if you have, we'll get started here on a new graph editor at procgenie.github.io, clicking on the Project tab, coming here and clicking Create Graph. We'll zoom in. You see that we've defined a start symbol here. I've already got this teed up for us. The start symbol tells the generator where it can begin. E, a production rule that tells the generator that it can move east. And then we set a reference object using the syntax we learned in one of our last videos. We set a reference object named world. Since that reference object hasn't been defined before, this will create a new reference object named world. The generator is then told, using a production rule, that it can move east again. And here we hit variable definition. So the syntax for setting a variable is brackets, the variable name equal to the variable value, close brackets. So here we're setting a variable named size, and we're setting it to the value small. Here we're setting a variable named size to the value large. And what's that variable being set on? It's being set on whichever reference objects are currently set. So you're setting a variable world.size to small, world.size to large. Now to interpolate that variable, here we're going to move east again using this production rule. You place the name of the reference object inside the arrows with dot the name of the variable, so world.size. Again, to interpolate a variable, you have arrows and the name of the reference object dot the name of the variable, world.size in this case. So here we should either have the world as small or the world as large. And if we run it, the world is large. The world is small. We see some additional generated text. We'll look at that in just a second. So again, we've set a reference object. We've set a variable either to small or large on the reference object. And then we've interpolated the variable using arrows and the name of the reference object and the name of the variable. Moving on, we can use variables as constraints. So we could have text that says what a small world it is, have text that says what a large world it is. It will be picked based on these constraints. Size, so the name of the variable, again we're in brackets, the name of the variable, triple equals to the value that the constraint that we're checking against. So is size equal to small? What size? World.size. Again, we're using the currently defined reference objects. Is the variable named size on the reference object world equal to small? Or is the variable size on the reference object world equal to large? If it's small, what a small world it is. If it's large, what a large world it is. Okay, click the world is small, what a small world it is. We can also add, with strings, we can add to the variable. So we could change size by saying the syntax for this is to the variable name within brackets plus equals the value that you want to add. Again, the variable name in brackets plus equals the value that you want to add. So what a small world it is, what a large world it is, but just right. Let's see what happens when we call that. Again, we've reset the size variable by adding to it. There's a production rule saying we can go east, and then when we go east, we'll have a second call to size, and we'll interpolate the variable again to see what the second result is. The world is large, what a large world it is, second call to size, large but just right. So we're maintaining that internal consistency, large, 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 and we've added to the variable but just right. Talk about some other operators that we can use on variables. Again, we have a start symbol. This is a new graph. We just clicked on this other graph called Other. There's a start symbol. We set a reference object to scoops. Let's talk about scoops of ice cream, let's say. And we set a variable on the reference object scoops, a num or number, to 45. Then we're going to interpolate that variable. There are scoops.num, ice cream scoops. And finally, here's the new syntax that we're learning. We can either add to the numerical variable, or with a numerical variable, you can subtract from it. So we're either going to add 10 or we're going to subtract 10. These are two different components. It will choose one or the other with equal probability factors. After that, the generator can move south again. And there are scoops.num, so we're interpolating scoops here. There are scoops.num ice cream scoops. So we'll say it once, we'll change it, we'll say it again. And then we'll introduce another constraint. We can use less than or greater than as constraints. So we can say the value of scoops is less than 40 if num is less than 40. Here's a different component because of the pipe symbol. The value of scoops is greater than 40 if num is greater than 40. Now let's run that. There are 45 ice cream scoops. There are 55 ice cream scoops. The value of scoops is greater than 40. So we first generate the text just interpolating the variable. Then it chose between the two components and it added 10 instead of subtracting 10. We interpolated the variable again. There are 55 ice cream scoops. And then, as a constraint, we chose between the two components. Is it greater than or less than 40, using that syntax of greater than or less than. Again, we've set a reference object. We've set a variable named num to 45 on the reference object, scoops. We've interpolated the variable scoops.num. We've either added or subtracted from the variable num on the reference object scoops. We've again interpolated the variable num. Then we've used constraints to either determine whether the value is less than 40 or the value is greater than 40. And at the beginning of this video, we did the same thing with strings. We've set a variable named size to the value small or large on the reference object world. We interpolated the variable size on the reference object world. We checked whether size was small or large and used that as a constraint on production. We added a string to the existing string with but just right. Size plus equals just right. And finally, we interpolated the variable again. And that's variables.